Before I talk about this amazing and very brief Mask is Off documentary about the making of Chromacopia, I need to talk about movies and movie documentaries and the ways in which they are almost always insanely disappointing. You see, movie documentaries traditionally break down into two categories. You have your public relations fluff fests, where you interview actors talking about their character, what could be more boring, or on-set stories and pranks and little anecdotes. It's all pasteurized and not raw at all. Or you have, your glowing retrospective, 10 years, 20 years, 25 years, 30 years, whatever, where you sit down with the director or the actor and you have the kind of glossy interviews and clips of the audience and reactions from the press and how much it's impacted people's lives, the apotheosis of a piece of art. But much like the other version, it's just not raw and it's just not interesting at all. Which is why my favorite documentary about filmmaking, perhaps surprisingly, is from Star Wars, from Episode 1, the documentary entitled The Beginning. It came out in 2001, directed by someone named John Shank, and it's an amazing piece of art because it is all about the creation of Episode 1, Phantom Menace, and there's no voiceover. There's no interviews. All of the footage is like footage from the actual making. And you see, what does George Lucas do? You see him write, you see him edit, you see him produce, you see him talk, you see him cast, you see him edit, you see him film, you see the whole thing. But it's all fly on the wall. It is all real and it is all raw. Down to the point where you see him talk about budgeting, how they did it. And what I love is that it both supports and fights a sort of old French theory of cinema called the auteur theory. Auteur is the word for author. It means to actually write. And the idea is that, authors write books and film directors are authors of cinema. And in a way, The Beginning shows that that's not what Star Wars is, because you have one guy, but like 100 other people are working underneath him, and you see him and he's going through and he's writing on storyboards and he's describing what's digital, what's not. The famous line, "It's like poetry, they rhyme," comes from this documentary. You see him, he has 3 stamps. One says "a deep regret," the other says "okay," and the third says "fabuloso." And he tours all the artists in his employ who are helping make his vision come to light, and he stamps them with one of those 3 things. But does that mean he's not an auteur? Or does that mean that that's what an auteur looks like, especially of a project that big? That's the genius. It's not just him sitting alone writing his script or him behind the camera filming like this. It's also all the other things, his ability to produce and direct. That is the way that I see Mask is Off by Tyler, the Creator. That's why it's such a great documentary. Even though it's 6 minutes and 30 seconds, you could watch it 10 times in a row, and you have so many amazing takeaways about his creation and how, in case you did not know, he is indeed a real auteur, okay? Many musicians these days are not. Many musicians these days have a team who has a team who has a team, and you have a PR guy and an A&R guy, and they come in and they find producers and they find songwriters and they'll punch it up and they'll tell you where to rap and they'll tell you what to do and they'll tell you how to market it and they'll just go ahead. This little vignette, the series of vignettes, these little stitched together scenes show what a real artist Tyler, the Creator, is. Now, I've been surprised. There has not been that much talk about this on this platform. I'm releasing this 1 week after it comes out. I've seen a couple reactions to it. The Screwface guy said, Tyler is a genius. And, well, that is sort of what that shows, because this shows his real process. And it is something we really need to just hold on to and cherish, because very few artists give us this. Definitely not artists of the caliber of Tyler, the Creator. You do see his true wealth. It's what I love about this. True wealth is not how many cars you can buy. It's how well you can live. And seeing him recording in all of these beautiful places where he has a nice clean house that clearly has lots of space with giant windows out which he can look. It really gives you that sense of true wealth. But the best thing about this whole review, this whole documentary, is the way that it's made in that way that is not dissimilar from The Beginning. That was made by John Shank. This is filmed by someone named Lazaro Rodriguez, and it's an amazing job of framing. The whole way through, Tyler is framed from way far away. and sometimes way too close, and sometimes half shots, whatever it is, you feel like you are a fly on the wall, but you're closer, and sometimes you're further away. And it gives you this picture of Tyler, the creator, as an auteur, as a producer. And what do you see in here? You see his passion. You see his joy. One of my favorite stories, I forget, it was some comedian was discussing what it was like working or knowing Kanye West. He said he invited me into, to go back to his apartment, and we were hanging out, and he just kept on playing his own music for me. And like that sense of excitement, you can see that as ego, but it's more like just joy. Like, look at this thing, like the same way, I don't know, I'll show you a picture of my baby, if you know me in real life. But look at this thing I made. Like, that's the sense and the joy and the passion that you have. And you have this idea of him as like, in this whole thing, you have him alone at his computer, and he's working, and he's rapping, and he's figuring things out. But you also see what a great collaborator he is, what a great producer, what a great coordinator he is. Talent as a performer and a producer. And really, taken all together, it completes the album for me. Because it is such an ambitious piece of work. It is so wide-spanning, and it feels so personal that to actually see how it's made, how personal it is, it really helps you to, if you didn't have enough respect for the album just based on how good it is, you can now see how it's made. So I want to go through the album through the video, through the documentary, almost shot by shot, because I think each shot is chosen to show a different thing. Now, obviously, it starts off, and the whole thing has the Chromakopia green around it, the green frame, and it starts off with a faraway shot. It's like the camera is way in the back on a different level than Tyler's at, and he's singing "The Fire," off that first song there, and he's singing, and his singing's not perfect. There's one thing I wish was more in this documentary, is more mistakes, more errors, more of a sense of like, geez, what if this goes wrong? But that's okay. And you hear him just yelling, just bah, like he's all excited. Then you see him playing piano and just how into his own art he is. And then one of my favorite sections is just this percussive moments where he's working on percussion. He's trying all these different kinds of percussion all by himself. Cassava, egg shakers, like shells, different kinds of African percussions. I think he plays djembe at a certain point. There's some electronic drums. There's like a different shirt all these different times. He tries doing that. And one of my favorite things is the unintentional advertising he does for Jessica's Vanilla Maple Granola. I put this on my shopping list with Wegmans. My wife was like, Skye, what are you on about? We are an anti-GMO family. GMO kills poor people, in case you didn't know. So, we try not to buy stuff that's non-GMO, just on principle, and we definitely don't buy granola in the house. So she was like, what? Is this some video thing? Yes, it is. So this is in multiple shots. And this tells me a lot, right? This object tells me a lot. Because like people who eat granola like this are usually super busy. They're usually working super hard. They need something that's tasty, that's filling, like he's not like ordering pizza or Chinese food and there's food all over the place. It's like a clean, quick source of sustenance. But what I love is if you actually watch it, unlike this one, because I wanted to give you a review of the granola myself. Unlike this one, the granola is unopened. So it's all sealed up, it's unopened. And you actually see there's a cord laying on top of the granola, okay? There's a cord laying on top of the granola for different days of the shoot. He's wearing a t-shirt in one, another one he's wearing flannel and a vest. So he's so invested in his work that he's not even taking the time to eat the food that he has that's next to the computer to quickly eat, okay? That's showing his level of dedication, his passion, the grind that he is on. This is surprisingly good granola, actually. It reminds me strongly of granola that my ex-girlfriend used to make. It's pretty good. It's never worth the price. Store-bought granola is never worth the price, but it's not bad. But do you get what I'm saying? Like the level of care and detail, and just a little tiny detail in the frame that communicates that. We see him directing horns. Oh my God, this is for Thought I Was Dead. And you just see how excited he is to have these musicians and to work with these musicians and to get this sound. And you hear him sing it and you hear how he's just trying to get it going. We have a whole different scene now. He's no longer just in his house. He's now in a studio where you see behind him, weirdly enough, like a stormtrooper and like a Wookiee mask from Star Wars. I don't know what that's about, except it helped me to think about at the beginning. There's also like a Louis Vuitton bag in the foreground, you know, so I don't know, communicating nerdy passion, luxury goods, you know. Oh, these, yeah, that's why these are up here. This is a Louis Vuitton bag that I purchased for my mother in 1999. I've talked about it before. That was my combined birthday and Christmas gift for the entire time that I was alive. Anyways, I used it to teach now. And we see just him conducting with this falsetto voice and how clearly he sees his vision and how excited he is to have that vision executed by people around him. We see it cut to him then at his computer mixing it all together. And we see the whole process that he works with these musicians and then he's just alone in his little studio. We have a guitar player who's working on things. We see him rapping the St. Chroma, "Come down, 1 mil." We see him actually rhyming that verse. And that's what's great is that this whole thing, I assume there's so much footage that you could just have an entire thing of like, oh, there's that, there's that, there's that. It's not like that. It's not like you're going to see everything being recorded, but you get the feeling of how it was made. You see him singing from far away. You see it cut to a female vocalist who I assume for the song "Take Your Mask Off." And what's great is if you actually look, you can see it's filmed in a weird way where it's mostly focused on the speaker and the singers in the far background. You actually see it's Tyler filming with his phone. You can see his reflection in there. And then you see him singing to "Take Your Mask Off," and the vulnerability that you hear in the music, that you hear on wax or on stream, is what is communicated in his face and his voice when he actually sings the song. It's just great. There's this whole bit where he's singing along with the guitar and the camera is really unflattering. It's like up his face like that, like a way you never want to be. And just there's a certain point where Sexy Red is rapping and you see her kind of looking at her phone. And it's almost incongruous. It's almost incongruous because the image of a rap artist staring at their iPhone and rapping is sort of, it kind of breaks a lot of mystique, you know? It kind of breaks a lot of the, like I've seen a lot of great rappers, many great rappers, some of the best rappers in the world do it. But also it feels kind of crass and feels sort of, I don't know, Sexy Red. But then just great images. Again, this time Tyler's way too close and he's nodding his head along. You know, it's before where he's way off before. Then we see a close-up of his screen and we see all the different files that he has open. For Rainy, intro. We see how he's trying to name all of these files on his computer. Then we see him just rapping super raw. You know, "My only vice is these sweets. Calm that down. You know, hope you find your way home." And just how raw he is, and you know, not having a hat. Looks like he hasn't had a haircut in a couple of days. Then we watch him play back and listen to it, and just how exciting it is to have him listening to his own art, and just all that passion that he feels. And then we see these hands playing pianos, and then we see Round and Round, and we see him editing this down, and we're just struck by how dark his recording space is and how bright and green the world is in front of him. This is what an artist does, right? They live in darkness to depict light, right? And I mean, that's what the Chromakopia is, right? He's living in black and white to give us all these colors. And then watching these drum lines, you know, like a whole drum line in the studio, like doesn't really seem like they're just trying to make sticky work, right? You know, because like there's so much to sticky. It's just so great to see Tyler with his hand on his hip as he's directing them. You can see how excited he is to have these sounds on there. And if you look carefully, you see an actual engineer. Because Tyler's great, but you need actual engineers. So I'm happy that we see him. And then we see the energy of Sticky, all the female rappers and vocalists in there. Just sticky. Like, it's real energy. You cannot counterfeit that. It comes through in the album, and we see it here. Okay, thanks to this amazing documentary, I want to make sure I get their name correct again, by Lazaro Rodriguez. Okay, thanks to this amazing work, we were able to have this image, and we see how raw it is. Oh, it's just amazing. It's just amazing. And he's like dancing to his music. Just so much of it is him dancing to his music. And then we have of him dancing in particular to "I Don't Want to Be Found," and it's cool because we saw earlier him working on percussion, and I assume he's working on percussion for here. Remember when he wasn't eating this delicious granola? Jessica's gluten-free, maple-free granola. It's not just what we use, it's what we don't. And then we see him recording just for 1 second on his phone. Like, how was that even used? That's not going to be on the album, is it? And then we get to a whole moment of him, John Lennon style, playing a piano by himself. And hey, I didn't know he was this good of a piano player. I assumed he could play piano. I assumed he could play piano like John Lennon could play piano, enough to play chords and write music, but not like really play piano. But he can really play piano, and that comes through, and that's the musicality behind his music. And I would have to say he hides his musicality for the most part, because it isn't what's needed in the kind of art that he's making. But it's fun to see that it's there. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. Then a little quiet moment, I think we see Willow in there. Then we see him like mixing down a computer, just looking over then we see Thundercat playing with him, and Thundercat's, this 5-string bass, super funky, and it appears as though Tyler's playing djembe, that same guitar player's there. We see him singing falsetto in a Braves cap. We see him playing piano. We see him playing vibraphone. And sometimes what I love is, where is his mouth? Because when his mouth is open, that appears to be when he's really most into it, because he's just thinking, he's just not at all thinking about himself. He's just like entirely in some kind of flow state that comes about that, and that's how I feel. There's a great scene of just the LaFleur hat just popping out over a piano, and an image of Snoop Dogg and Tupac, Death Row image, which always makes me sad, by the way. I hate images of them together because I feel it's just too close to Tupac's death. We see him like singing falsetto, and then just he celebrates this recording like he just scored a touchdown in the Super Bowl. Like he's just like, he's just so excited. How do you not love this? How do you not feel this album so much more after seeing this process? Or if you're Canadian, process. We see him popping a balloon, maybe for fun, I don't know. We see his passion again on piano, where he's like tracing these melodies with his voice, and then the sound continues. And for the first time in the entire documentary, the sound that's played is not aligned with the image that's given to you. Okay, the sound is him playing piano in contemplation. The image is him taking out the mask. And this is symbolic. We have now officially seen everything that went into making the album. The rapping, the guest, the beat making, the musicians, all of that. So we've basically had pre-production. We've had production. And now he gets the mask, which symbolizes all of this stuff that was happening behind. The mask is off. That's what we just got to see. And then what we'd see after that is the mask being on. Okay? But for this whole video, his mask was off. And it's a real treat. And I think we need to celebrate it. And that's why I made a video about it. Because maybe you didn't check it out. Maybe you just thought it was just another, like, glossy, boring thing. I'm really excited about this album because the last album, who cares? Just do it. All right. Until next time, there's the camera.